what are some of the problems in the prevailing systems of management that you originally wrote about back in the 90s, but are also still plaguing us today a bit?
Well, there's always been a tendency for management to be exploitative. And what I mean by that is, it basically exploits people to accomplish the goals of some small number of people. Um, so in that sense, people are there to be used to accomplish the goals of, as I say, a few. The owners, the founders, the bosses. And that's always been a problem, and there have always been exceptions. So where that is not the prevailing philosophy. But I also think that over time, lots of things change that create new kind of forces at play. So just to be more specific, there are industries today, like the software industry is a good example, where the sheer complexity of what people are doing have really forced more and more organizations to throw out a lot of traditional ideas of management. Imagine you create a product. We're making a TV product right now. Imagine you're creating a product where you actually do all this work, but you don't know what's going to happen. You're building this car, but when somebody turns the wheel to the left, the car may go to the right, or they hit the brake and it may accelerate. That's a whole new world. That's the world of software today. The environments of the software environments within which new software products are being integrated have now reached a level of complexity that literally no one knows what that new element of software will do. I'm just using this to illustrate. I don't think this is as true of any other industry, but it might be a trend that will affect a lot of industries. It's certainly true in software. And when you get to that point, you have to kind of give up control. The idea that we're going to do this and it's going to produce that outcome. And that I've always thought was the fundamental error in the, let's just say, the mainstream management. This basic belief that a small number of people can control an enterprise and ultimately obviously control others, tell them what to do. The classic assembly line would be the icon, the archetype of this. Somebody sets up the assembly line and then the workers are just really nothing more than one more type of machine in a process that somebody else controls. That's not the way our families work. Anybody thinks they're in control of their family, they're kind of a delusional state, right? You're like, oh yeah, I'm in complete control of my teenager.
Right.
So it's interesting, as soon as we shift over and think about the world of social realities, families, relationships, the image of control just has to change. Obviously, no one's in control as you would be of a machine. But I think that's exactly what happened in you might say, the industrial age, the machine age. This kind of thinking of somebody in control gradually spread more and more till it infected all of management. And management became a process of how to control things. So I think that's always been problematic because the obvious reason, nobody wants to be on the receiving end.
Right.
Someone else in control. Yet it still kind of became the mainstream, and it's really what was taught in business schools. Your purpose of the business is to maximize the return of investors' capital, and your job as a manager is to control things so that happens, and blah blah blah. So I think that became a kind of a mass hypnotic situation where people started to believe this was really doable, and it's breaking down for good reason. It's never been a great idea for a lot of reasons, like, as I said, no one really wants to be controlled. So it's always limited creativity, engagement, spirit, people feeling genuinely committed to what they're doing. But it was still the mainstream. And I think it's breaking down now because, in fact, reality is starting to show people that that's no longer the case. As I said, the software industry is a good example. It's not the only one, though, but I think it's becoming pervasively understood that the products they're building cannot be determined. We do this and this is the outcome. The consequence then, just like it is in all other aspects of life, if you're not in control, then all you can do is learn. You do something, you try something, and then you have to see if it works or not. And that's kind of the fundamental divide so to speak. This kind of mindset of control versus a mindset of learning. And literally the way things work in the software industry now is people introduce new elements of software. Used to do it on 9-month cycles, now typically do it on 1 to 2, 3 week cycles, because they try to take small steps, and then everybody has to think about, well, what's happening? You have to gather a lot of data, you have to reflect, well, gee, that's doing something crazy, and why do we think that's going? So it's a lot more like learning to walk than it is controlling a machine. You try something, and then you have to see how it works. So that was always, you might say, the fundamental idea, you might say, from a cultural standpoint. You know, what was the culture of an organization that really is fundamentally about learning, not controlling?